Not a single word is spoken throughout Inside. Its journey is told by haunting soundscapes, the low dynamic range of textures, and the sheer weight of the proposed context in each of its consecutive scenes. This form of storytelling, one that avoids explicit communication, allows Inside to project a mystery that very few games perform successfully. It withholds the truth of its story from us, while conjuring a raw, undiluted drive to ask questions about the very meaning of what drives us at all. Inside is all about pure interpretation. Its mysteries are less about what and more about why. Mysteries that are shaped by all of our own unique experiences and perspectives on themes of morality, ethics, and what it means on a fundamental level to be human. To explain this properly, I'm going to use a bit of a strange example. In an eclipse, the sun's light is slowly obscured over time by the moon, but its effect ripples in every perceivable direction. Its technical meaning, as the shadows consume the surface of the earth, becomes briefly replaced in the mind. It transitions to an inexplicable awe to each observer in profound depth. We all know what an eclipse is, even if our celestial knowledge is limited. We're aware of the objective reality of the process. We know a rock is covering up the light from our nearest star, but it's when that light diminishes and we are left alone, isolated for the briefest of moments. Well, there's a flicker of magic, of wonder and mysticism. It's absolutely no surprise then that the ancient Greeks looked up at the disappearing light during these events and condemned the demons for devouring their sun. Inside's journey doesn't have the level of scientific and symbolic impact a solar eclipse does, but there is a strong resemblance on how its construct triggers a universal meaning in us that transcends conscious thought. Inside's more like an interactive piece of art than it is a video game in its classical definition. You can go through the technical process of winning or losing when playing, but its purpose is to provoke a state of mind, questioning the emotions that manifest gradually, to defragment the thoughts and symbolism embedded within, much like an eclipse. This becomes evident in the first chapter of Inside. We are immediately hunted, running frantically between scattered rocks and fallen trees, desperately searching for escape. If we are caught, we are destroyed. The danger and the fear it entails is made abundantly clear through the use of dark tones and the shattering of silence. When spotted, barking guard dogs and the unmistakable gunshots that cut through the air tell us that the forest we reside in is unwelcoming. Inside makes it perfectly clear that danger is apparent with each step. Isolation begins to rear its ugly head when we start to understand that we do not belong here, that we are an outlier and a threat to those who hunt us. This is the first time a formulation occurs, dividing us and them. It's an incredibly powerful introduction that serves as a tool to structure Inside's existential philosophy moving forward. Being hunted means it is difficult to question our cognitive functions if they're being held hostage by survival instinct, and this is what lets us overlook our first important question. Are we running into danger or away from it? You can start to see these themes of us versus them revisited a little later when we use the mind controller for the first time. This is where a subtle hierarchy is introduced. Instead of a dichotomy, there becomes a scale. So there's this switch between us and them to the spectrum of control. Now we are the master instead of the slave, the dictator as opposed to the subordinate. When we wear the controller on our heads, we demand and expect our slaves to obey. Yet, judging by the ferocity in which we are hunted throughout inside, it can be assumed that we ourselves have clearly disobeyed before. There's also this strange sense of desolation that resonates as scenes of puppets and the destruction endured to create those puppets are grotesquely shown to us in ever-increasing increments. Because the only life that seems to have true agency is yours. The parasite wreaking havoc inside a pig before entering the barn and the processing of humans into obedient slaves are prominent examples of this. However, Inside openly mocks our place in this hierarchy with its marching section. It posits the illusion of free will as we lean forward in our seats under anxiety's grip, eagerly awaiting our command to jump. All of this is designed to upheave your senses. It's designed to extract you out of a secure, comforting mindset of knowing exactly where you stand in its universe in order to make you question the nature of control. At the same time, Inside has a knack for distraction, testing your survival instincts right before you start to cast your attention to its themes. This philosophy of self-agency is placed before us for the first time in the barn. The puppets we control look non-human, shells of who they once were, their souls eradicated and bodies manufactured. Inside presents us with a new dilemma and unveils the hazy boundary between life and death. If we compare the puppets to ourselves for just a moment, and remove the typical assumptions of us versus them, as well as the position of ourselves as the master, we can ask a deeper philosophical question. Consider the puppets like a mirror. We stand transfixed, unable to discern which side holds our true reflection. If we ourselves can exert control over dolls with such unwavering grip to bring them to life and to give them purpose from nothing, then how can we know that this power does not stretch beyond puppeteering the strings of our own existence? Inside has a brilliant way of projecting these deep, resounding existential concepts throughout. They bubble slowly to the surface over time, but resonate so strongly that despite its apparent ambiguity as a story, we are intrinsically familiar with its overarching messages. That the greatest source of unease does not stem from discovery, but from the vast unknown that stretches from beyond our reach. This is true for the context of the boy we control, but also for the pursuit of science, portrayed as a monster in its own right throughout. Both science and the path the boy takes are driven by a near unstoppable force, so much so that the consequences of both those journeys have lost their respective meanings. When you look at these two aspects of drive and scientific freedom by any means necessary, they are intricately woven together by Inside's art style. Visual perspectives are like paintings in of themselves, framed in such ways that our eyes are gently guided, centered to focus on the boy, who is almost always contrasted against the darkness with his red shirt. Inside brilliantly guides our movement through flowing lines and environmental design, creating a sense of forward momentum without explicit instruction. The flow of movement feels natural, soft and easy. Inside knows intimately that we long to push forward, that we don't need an explicit reason to do so. Its visual construction unshackles reason and instinct gracefully. But this manipulation, however, is not without consequence. As we progress, the line between guidance and control begins to blur. Are we truly free to choose our own path, or are we simply following a predetermined course, unknowingly led by unseen forces? How far does this extend? Could it be argued that Inside is playing us just as much as we play it in equal measures? Perhaps then we may not be as in control as we think we are. Perhaps the freedom within Inside is merely that of an illusion, and a presented path will be followed without question. What it tries to do is frame that philosophy throughout all dimensions. Its existential questions are asked of the puppets, the boy, the science behind the dystopian world you're in, and even of yourself as the player. Further on, there are these decaying metal sheets scattered on rooftops and arrays of deformed pipes connecting flooded warehouses that lay lifeless within inside. Moving through them feels like moving through a dream, a shadow of an abandoned world which once stood great. There's this sense of loss, grief, and pain that lingers in each of its sections. The purpose of this broken world is a reminder that we are subject to the mercy of an industrial husk, that it remains indifferent to our safety and is unresponsive and uncaring towards our well-being. Perhaps the aspect of decay and destruction never changed its hostile nature, that its disintegration was merely a byproduct of a corrupt vision grasped by those who came before. It's an interesting thought that leaves more questions than answers, as does Inside as a whole. The art and sound design helps to reinforce this form of ambiguity. It's cold, abstract, and piercing. Powerful emotions and concepts that transcend conscious thought run deep through the blood of Inside's music and sound design. They help to define its overarching theme by merging echoes, drones, and atmospheric soundscapes crafted by Martin Stick Anderson. Each track delicately emulates a feeling of diving into an abyss, the unknown, in hopes of discovery of who we are and why we are doing what we're doing, even if that discovery reforms our significance. The music of Inside represents the exploration into how we know what we know without the mediation of language. It questions how we decipher meaning without text and direct influence from explicit communication. Anderson's score, titled Shockwave, the track you're hearing now, mirrors Inside's timing puzzle section elegantly, whilst bringing forward the weight of an unrelenting desire to dive deeper into the unknown. Its crushing explosions of low frequencies replicate the needle of a clock. Each tick is irreversible, and much like our protagonist, going back is not an option in all senses of the word. Decisions, despite a lack of moral integrity, are sometimes everlasting, the scars of which are traversed by you. You are the one who has to see death, destruction, and the consequences of a disregard for moral ethics. By the way, I just want to take a brief moment to check up on you. Inside delves into a world of profound darkness, both visually and thematically. It explores the depths of despair, where pain and suffering seem inescapable. If you find yourself in such a place right now, your current struggles do not define your worth. You are a remarkable person, deserving of a brighter path. Opening up and talking about these burdens can be incredibly helpful. It offers a chance to find new solutions and eases the weight you carry. Don't hesitate to seek support. You are not alone in this fight by any means. If you have to, take things one small step at a time, and remember you have the strength to overcome this. Now, there is one scene deep within Inside's story that defines its eeriness with brutal precision. The veil of what should have remained hidden is uncomfortably removed. What is revealed forces us to acknowledge a painful truth about ourselves, that there are monsters beneath the surface, lurking inside all of us. It's near the end of the game. A caged aberration, exposed for observation and study, stumbles aimlessly. The repetitive motion of its attempt to move lacerates the skin, causing blood to paint the glass. What is most terrifying is not only the anomaly's uneasy replication of human movement, but the clinical themes surrounding it. They are unforgiving, unethical, savage in their efforts to portray failed experiments as mere statistical data points. You can see and almost feel this in the chairs that are placed neatly in rows in front of the camera. The arena is well lit to allow the atypical bipedal organism to be tested and watched. Its purpose for existing, however painful, is purely for analysis. In other chambers throughout this section, reams of data-encoded paper are churned out from a nearby machine, almost bestowing an empirical meaning in a world without any. A cruel irony that these are unreadable to us, unknowable, beyond our reach. It was here, in this moment, that I was hit the hardest. This facility was once an opportunity for science to build on the shoulders of the giants that came before. Its emptiness projects an environment where empathy has no meaning. There are only ghosts, imprints left on a canvas of a dream in which the painters have all abruptly woken up. So this scene is important because it shows us a reflection of ourselves for the briefest of moments, that we all hold the potential to be monsters if we're not held accountable for the actions that we take. Is it reasonable to assume that sacrifices must be made to explore genetic alteration for the benefit of mankind? If we push the boundaries of what is possible and create a world in which our suffering is eased, then is there a price too high for such a milestone? The dystopia that Inside projects is a suggestion of what happens when you pursue that cause without question. It's delivered through dead pigs piled up on a farm, the lifeless puppets and the failed experiments lurking in the depths of Inside's watery caverns. These experiments were done with someone's best interests in mind, and the very act of convincing yourself that you have someone's best interest in mind can be an extremely deadly weapon. The vehicle of this story is saving a child from death. The bond you create and the vision you have is essentially what corrupts you in the end. You just don't realize it until it's too late. We think we are doing good, but so did they. What I think Inside is about is what it looks like when we transition to and from this state. No matter who we are, there is always going to be a fog of moral uncertainty in us all. Shortly after this section, our protagonist is swept up in the amalgamation of flesh and limbs. Blood, destruction, and death are tools we now wield. We have fully transcended into the beast itself. There's a sense of chaos and revenge in this final chapter. We feel justified to enact judgment on those who most likely ordered the hunt for us at the very beginning. Throughout Inside, we progressed at any cost. We manipulated those puppets, we even guided those tiny chicks into a vacuum and brought havoc to those who did the very same to countless others. In its ultimate scene, we lay lifeless, splayed agonizingly on a beach. We have come full cycle in our journey, our empathy in line with theirs, our purpose now scrubbed, and the consequences of our actions laid out in all of its ugly forms. What good did we do? What is truly different between us and the suits that build monsters? Did we really, honestly, have control over the decisions we made? I want to end with one last thought. There's a powerful moment before we transcend into the final monster. A moment that unites and ties together all of the concepts mentioned before. As we float one last time, basked in light, the scientists gaze upon us, not with fear, but with admiration.